Hello, this is the Shrey Sharma Show, episode 1 with Christopher Hoffer. And he's the most famous recruiter into the Salesforce ecosystem, who's also been a CRM consultant for 10 years of his life and then later decided to be a recruiter into this space. And today we're going to be talking about different things with him on this show. Let's see what we've got. Hey Chris, how are you doing today?
Hey, Shrey, I'm doing great, man. How you doing
Everything
today?
great, man. It's been a long time since we had a last conversation, right?
It's been a while, man. I've missed you. I haven't seen your videos in a while. I know you've been busy with other things, but it's great to reconnect
Great.
again.
And how's the work going on?
Work is busy, man. This year, on the recruiting side, as in any other year, I've been doing this a little over 5 years now, and this year has definitely been the busiest. I think Salesforce is just continue to see exponential growth, and as that growth happens within the company, more customers are doing more things with Salesforce and needing more talent to get things done.
So, what do you think exactly is contributing to the to the growth that Salesforce industry is facing right now?
That's a good question. Well, I think last year a lot of unknown was occurring in the economy with the businesses, whether or not they wanted to continue to invest in technology. And since all that was unknown and on hold, people weren't really doing much. Layoffs were occurring, budgets were being held up, or just not, money wasn't being spent on new innovations and new growth and new technologies. And then over time, as last year ended and this year started to pick up, I think this became the new norm, and I don't really like that term, but that's kind of what I saw over the last 12 months. And now those budgets are being released. Companies are continuing to want to innovate, do new things on their initial investment with CRM, with Salesforce, and continue to build new processes, new automations, hiring new personnel, bring new system integrators in. And so whatever was saved last year from a budget perspective is being re-released now this year, causing the additional growth. I think that's kind of my take on what I'm seeing, as well as kind of the new way of working, everyone being remote. That's causing a lot of changes in processes as well. And we need technology and Salesforce capabilities to be able to achieve success using those new features and functionalities.
Got it. Do you think okay, so do you think that the demand and supply ratio that's going on for the Salesforce talent is facing a huge gap right now in the industry?
Oh yeah, it is. Like anytime I do a search on LinkedIn for Salesforce jobs, there's thousands of openings, whether that's your system integrators or whether that's industry itself or even Salesforce, right? There's just so many open positions right now, and all of them want experience, folks, and there's just not enough experience individuals to go around. And so the demand continues to be off the charts. The supply is slowly starting to get there, but there's still such a huge divide between those two right now. And I think companies are going to, and they've started and they'll continue to do so, relax the requirements some just to continue to innovate on their initial investment of Salesforce and just start to maybe train or retool those either in-house people that they have or hire someone more junior just to get someone in the door and then reskill them or train them up, et cetera. Because if everyone wants a 7-year Salesforce veteran to come in, there's only so many of those that are out there available.
Got it. And are you aware about Salesforce starting its own global delivery service team?
It's interesting you asked that. You know, with the acquisition of Acumen, and I've known some people that are in my network that have left and went to Salesforce into their advisory and consulting services. So I think there is continuing to be additional movement there. The question that comes to my mind is, what does that do with the partners that Salesforce already has? Does it leave a bad taste in their mouth, for example, especially the premier global partners, the Deloittes, the Accentures, the IBMs out there, or even the smaller partners, when Salesforce themselves are starting to recruit talent from some of these system integrators into their own organization, does that cause any animosity between the two? I haven't had any conversations with Salesforce employees about that at all, but that's just some thoughts that come to my mind when I started to see that acquisition with Acumen and then seeing employees or talent being acquired or recruited into Salesforce into their advisory and consultants? That's a good question, though.
So I myself is running as I think you're aware about it. I'm running Syntexa, which is again a partner of Salesforce, and we ourselves
Right.
are we are not a big consultancy like Accenture and IBMs and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
we ourselves are facing this problem that Salesforce itself is acquiring the talent of all of the partner, which all of the partners have got. Probably because the market share of the Salesforce partner ecosystem is 4 times bigger than Salesforce itself. So,
Right.
so if they'll even capture half of it, I think that their valuation is going to be almost triple down to what it is right now. So I think that's the roadmap that they are headed towards. Do you think that's something going on?
I think so, but historically, and I don't want to throw this conversation into one bag in its own, but a lot of times product companies that also mix services in tend to not always work out the best, right? I think a lot of times we've seen other product companies try to get into the service world and they lose focus about what their core competency is. I'm not saying this is what happened with Salesforce, but traditionally you kind of see some companies that try to do too much, and when they do that, they kind of lose their brand recognition and have not really sure what they want their overall go-to-market to be. And so that may happen with Salesforce. It's too early to tell, but I just think historically when companies tend to take on services on top of product development, it becomes a little dicey as far as what the future holds.
Makes sense. So okay, let's skip this for a while. I just want to know a little bit about you. Like, how does a job, how does a day in your job looks like? I mean, what exactly do you do?
Yeah, so since we're remote now at Impera staff, our company's small. We're all Houston based. We have a couple of sales folks, we have a couple of recruiters, and then we all have a daily call and we talk about open positions, what may have come in through the day yesterday, and where we stand on open positions, conversations we're having with talent, what we're seeing in the marketplace, what challenges we're running into, what priorities are of certain positions that we're working on. Um, and so after that call is over, it's only a 20 to 30-minute call. And usually each of us independently are working on our own things, right? So my focus is pretty much Salesforce, and so I'm either usually talking to clients as far as what challenges they're having in the market, what they need help on, and then I'm also playing the recruiter hat as well. So I'm also reaching out to talent, getting their resumes, having meaningful conversations with them, discussing offers that are being made to them, consulting them as far as do I think it's a fair offer, what's the benefits, doing negotiation for them. So, every day is different for me, Shrey, as far as what it could consist of, but it's always exciting and I enjoy talking to people, whether it's customers or candidates. And so, and I'm always like to have that consultation type of conversation when it comes to recruiting. And I think that's takes me a little bit of a different mindset than the traditional transactional recruiters out there, because I enjoy, kind of doing what I do and spreading my knowledge and my conversations and what I would do if I was in their position, if they need some guidance or some help or some advisement as far as when it comes to salary negotiations or looking to market what current salary ranges are. What am I seeing for PTO? What am I seeing around travel? What am I seeing around regards to the COVID situation and if a client's wanting people to come into work in the office, immunizations, all that type of stuff kind of goes into these conversations that I'm having with both clients and candidates.
Great. And I have one another question for you, and that is,
Sure.
you have an experience of 10 years. We happen to know about this as well. It's a great story that everyone would love to hear about you. That you've got an
Sure.
experience of being a CRM consultant of more than 10 years.
Right.
And after that, you
Right.
switched your profile from being a consultant to a recruiter. How came that
Right.
happening?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was in the grind for a long time, right? And I say in the grind, I mean in delivery mode, right? Consulting, working weekends, working late nights, doing deployments, getting hit broadsided with new requirements and change clients' expectations and being in meetings all day. And it was fun. I really enjoyed the work, and I gained a lot of skills and had a good salary and was traveling the world working for some big consulting firms. I even went independent for a number of years as well. And I started to get a little burned out, right? I was just ready for doing something different. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I figured I would try and put an entrepreneur hat on and figure out what I could leverage as far as what I did in the past and maybe be able to be successful at something different and still keep technology as part of my focus. So I still like to talk, so I took about things about what I enjoy doing. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy spreading knowledge, right? I enjoy writing. I enjoy podcasts. I enjoy social media. All those things, and take that along with the technology spin about my experience with CRM and integrations and being a developer and architect and all those things, and trying to combine all those things into something. And I just realized that recruiting probably was a good stepping stone in the right direction to be able to achieve the things that I had known in the past and also be able to leverage that for the future. And then, when I was at Accenture, I was a career counselor. And part of that was essentially helping newcomers that were just starting out in their careers get some guidance, some bearings, and some understanding about how to succeed, right, in their career success around consulting. And so that was a way for me to leverage also what I knew and help others that were just coming out of college or just transitioning into consulting or even the Salesforce or CRM as a whole. And so I wanted to continue to use that as well. And that's why a lot of times I speak to newcomers for resume reviews, mock interviews. My posts on LinkedIn are usually towards Salesforce newcomers. I just felt like I had a lot to offer. And plus, also with recruiting, it gives me a little bit more of a balance, right? I don't have to, my day can be parsed out however I need to. I'm married and have a kid at home. I need to leave in the middle of the day to pick him up from school, for example, or I have something else going on. I don't have to be behind my computer all
All the time.
day from 8:30 in the morning in the afternoon, being on calls day in and day out, being in client meetings. I can kind of self-direct my day a little bit more, give me some autonomy. That doesn't mean I work any less. I'm still working as much as I used to probably on the weekends and evenings, but I'm able to dissect my day a little bit better so it can still work within my personal life.
Got it. And while you're dealing with the boom in the Salesforce market right now of consultants and developers and architects and God knows what all profiles that are there, do you
Right.
even think about getting back onto being a Salesforce consultant or being a Salesforce architect or something like that?
Yeah. I've thought about it, Shrey. I still do trailheads and I still try to stay educated in the technology as well. Read the release notes, doing trailheads. I've thought about it, but then I always tend to continue to lean towards what I've been doing just because I enjoy it so much. I think if I've been doing it for so long now, almost 6 years, I guess a little bit over 5 years now, that if it were to fall apart and I couldn't help anybody else and there was no new open orders and I couldn't make a living doing recruiting, then I would possibly step back into doing Salesforce consulting. And since you and I talked, I had an opportunity to buy into a Salesforce consulting partner called the Nuage Group based out of the suburbs of Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a partner there, and I'm still doing sales and a little bit of project management there, but it's only a small percentage of my day. So I'm still getting not too far removed from the day-to-day delivery side of it. But I'm still dedicating a majority of my time still on the recruiting and the sales side of within peer staff. So I'm still able to balance both, I guess. And if for some reason that the recruiting I decided I'm burned out, I want to do something else, then I probably would step back into consulting full time or do something like that.
Got it. You know what? In India, there are a lot of recruitment people who want to become a Salesforce developer or a Salesforce consultant just because of the
Right.
compensations that a Salesforce developer of a relatively few years of experience is like the compensation which a person of very less years of experience is getting is way higher than 10 years of experience into recruitment. And they're thinking that what are we doing over here? Why aren't we learning this technology for which we are recruiting a lot of people and for which we know how to actually do like how to
Sure.
actually learn and how to actually navigate our career, because we are actually trying to help other people do that. So why don't do
Yeah.
it for ourselves? So what have you got to say for them?
I think that's a great way to look at it, right? I mean, if you don't, it's opposite of what I've done, right? But I came from a technical background, went to school for information systems, had a programming background, and so I think if I came from other direction, I probably would feel the same way as well. Like hearing about, and we talk about this internally within Imperial staff too, because the recruiters that we have on staff don't come from a technology background and aren't programmers, and like, Salesforce developers are making this, and Salesforce architects are making this. I'm in the wrong career. I need to transition my career into something like that, so they know that the salary is better, and then that the demand is higher as well. But here's the thing about Salesforce that's become open to anybody, regardless of what your background is, as long as you're willing to dedicate and get educated and learn and be able to explore opportunities and take some blows along the way and understand you'll get knocked down once in a while. But over the long term, there's going to be a lot of prosperity for you in your career if you decide to take that career path. So I think, is there any recruiters out there that are interested in jumping into that? By all means, I think there's plenty of opportunity to be had. It doesn't have to be recruiting. It could be, whatever your field is that you're currently in, whatever industry your role is in. There's been a lot of dynamics that's changed over the last, I guess, 5 or 10 years. Whereas back in my day, and again, I don't like to say that I'm that old out of the industry, but 20 years ago, if you want to get a career in IT, usually you had to have an IT degree, right, or relevant work experience. Whereas now, I think the playing field has really been leveled where you don't have to have that same background, and you can self-train with either these boot camps or using Trailhead or other ways to earn your own education and be able to market yourself into a Salesforce developer role or admin role, etc.
Got it. So, I have a simple question. Like, let's say there is a guy called as Peter. Peter is into recruitment. So Peter is just starting his career, and so he has got two options. Number one, he can get into recruitment, and number two, he can get into Salesforce as as a developer or as an admin or whatever. And in the relevant 5 years,
Yeah.
which profile do you think he'll be able to make more for himself in terms of skill set, in terms of compensation and everything?
That's a good question. With recruiting, it's commission driven, right? So a lot of times, most companies that I know of, you got a base salary and then you're commissioned, right? And so your commission though has no ceiling to it, right? So the more that you're going to hustle and the more that you're going to put into it, you have the opportunity to make, so if the conversation is driven financially only, let's just take it that direction, then I think going down the sales and recruitment path, there's just it's endless, right? Because you cannot ever peak out. Now might get burned out, but as far as there is no ceiling as far as how much you can make from a commission side. Whereas with Salesforce developers right now, if you're 5 years in, I won't say you're capped, but once you get to a certain level, your gradual growth from a salary perspective is only a small percentage, right? And then eventually you're going to have to get into being a VP of IT or a CTO or own your own company or going into independent contracting, right? And so going that route, there's still a lot of prosperity there as well. I guess it really depends on what drives you emotionally and what do you feel like how do you want to devise your day, right? And if you want to be just the best technologist that you can be and continue down the Salesforce career ladder, I think there's plenty of opportunity to be as successful as you want to be with that. If you get a little bit older, such as where I am in my career, other things that are priorities for me, and it's not just the financial side of the house, it's also personal well-being, my health, exercise, taking care of my family. And so those aspects change the dynamics as far as where I want to be in my career and what I want to do long term. So that's kind of my take on it. I don't know if that answers your question directly, but it kind of gives you a little bit of options on both sides. I think both can be as equally gratifying, regardless of what path Peter wants to take. I think he can still see success. I think the one with recruiting takes a lot longer to find success than with Salesforce developer. Like Salesforce development, you can, after a year or two, you're making very good money, right? Whereas recruiting, it may take 4, 5, 6 years before you get to maybe where you would be as a 2 or 3 year developer, right? Because recruiting is hard, right? I mean, there's a lot of recruiters out there, right? I don't know if there's a huge demand for recruiters, right? But the playing field is very competitive, right? And so you got to figure out how to make a brand for yourself, how to make a name for yourself, How do you give value back to the community without expecting anything in return? So there's a lot more give than take to be successful in recruiting, in my opinion. Whereas more Salesforce development is personal satisfaction, and there's some mentorship and there's some guidance and things like that. But majority of your day is going to be building new skills for yourself and being a developer versus recruiting. There's only a limited amount of skills that you can gain in recruiting, but you have to figure out other ways to do how to be successful, right? So whether it's writing or blogging or doing podcasts or somehow being your own brand to be successful in recruiting. So again, just a few more different options there for you. I think success lies in really the eye of the beholder and what they want to do with their careers.
So like since you've talked about personal brand, how much do you
Yeah.
think personal brand matters when you're applying for a new job or for a new role or for a new position, or even if you just want to be a solopreneur or whatever, you just want to do your own thing? How much importance does a personal brand, how much importance there is for a personal brand, no matter what you're doing?
Yeah, I think when you're a solopreneur, there's a lot more that's needed for branding because you have to usually you want customers to come to you, and you got to have a personal brand for that to happen, right? For them to recognize your work, what your skill level is, what your recommendations are, to make sure it's going to be worth their time to reach out to you and ask for your assistance. Versus personal branding when you're applying for positions and not a solopreneur, but you're an employee at a company, it's still important, but not as important because you should still have a good LinkedIn profile. Maybe you want to blog out there. Maybe you want to advertise your certifications and showcase some of your work when you're an employee. But because that's going to help you get your resume to the top of the stack when it comes to competing against other employees that are other candidates that are also applying. So I think depends on where you are in the ecosystem about what you want to do versus how much a brand, how much effort and energy you want to put in towards your personal brand.
Got it. Okay. So basically, what I understood out of it is, so if you want to be a freelancer, solopreneur, or you just want to do your
Yeah.
own thing, a personal brand is a very much required thing that you need to have.
Yes.
But when it comes to applying for a job, it is not required as such, but it's an added benefit that that takes you to the door, like that helps you get farther away from the other candidates who do not actually carry a
That's
personal brand. And
That's right. That's what when you're a solopreneur or you're running your own company, because that's what a solopreneur is. You got to be able to market yourself, right? And so branding is essentially just marketing yourself and being able to figure out how to do that successfully. Companies will recognize who you are and what you do, and then have that inbound leads come towards you. Unless you have also if you're doing outbound sales as a solopreneur, then that's another piece of it. That's not just branding, but that's also doing cold calls and cold emails and things like that, so people recognize who you are. But I think when it comes to branding and marketing and expecting inbound deal flow to come in, that's where the branding comes in. Whereas you're an employee, usually going outbound and applying for positions.
got it. And do you think that having a personal brand for a person who's looking for another job adds on value to the company that he or she would be joining? Like, let's say there is Peter. Peter has got a personal brand. He runs a blog and he's pretty much known into the space. And he's looking for a new job. And now there are two companies, X and Y. So, do you think the company will cash out more if they'll get the guy who has got his own personal brand? If they hired that person, like X
Yeah,
company is looking, yeah.
sure. That's a great question, and I think so. Because if this individual is good at branding themselves, they probably can also do a good job of brand or working with the market. So their role won't be just coming in as a Salesforce developer or an admin. If you want to have that later responsibility, saying, "Hey, Peter, you're doing a great job branding yourself, and you know what it takes to be recognized in the crowded space. We as a company need your intelligence, need to understand where you've been and how you've been able to succeed in personal branding, and talk to our marketing department about how we can also apply those principles that you applied at an individual level to more of a corporate brand perspective." And so, by all means, I think a company would be foolish not to take Peter up on his skill set, not just from a Salesforce technology perspective, but also about how he built a personal brand.
And I think that helps that particular company, whatever the X or Y, whichever the Peter joined, that helps that company attract more of the talent as well. Because if someone who's carrying a personal brand joins a company called like X company, then in that case, more people would be willing to join this X company because they'll be considering that as a good company, I guess.
That's exactly right. Let's say, for example, Peter has 15,000 followers on LinkedIn, right? And Chris has 500 followers on LinkedIn, okay? If Peter posts a position on his company's behalf trying to recruit talent, I think he's going to have a lot more success with his followers versus what Chris is doing because he doesn't really do anything. He doesn't have a personal brand. He's only got a couple hundred followers and no one really knows who he is. Peter is going to also be a value-added asset to the company for recruiting talent as well because Peter's been creating his own blog. He's been creating his own YouTube stations. He's been uploading. And so whatever he does, people are listening to what his thoughts are, right? Because he's socializing those. And then they also know that, hey, if Peter is successful and look at what he's done in his career, I want to work with Peter. I want to work for wherever Peter, Peter made a good choice of going to this company. He's not, he's a smart individual and he's made some good choices in his career. I want to be like Peter, so maybe I can also apply to where Peter is working at and he can kind of be a mentor for me or teach me a little bit more about my career along the way.
So, yeah, this is exactly I think what happens, and you agree to that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have another question for you, and that is you carry a personal brand for yourself, and that's an amazing thing that you have built, especially on the LinkedIn platform. I guess you're the only recruiter who is carrying this much this much of fame in the Salesforce space. So what advice do you have for someone who is also willing to, or who also wants to have a personal brand for themselves, but are not able to actually figure it out that how can they, I mean, how they can actually start with that?
And that's a good question, Shrey. I think you just got to start somewhere, right? And I don't know where that somewhere is, and only the individual has to figure that out themselves. And there's going to be some terms along the way, and I don't have it all figured out, right? And I've been doing it a long time, but what I did do is I committed to myself that I was going to write something on LinkedIn on a daily basis. So come hell or high water, sometimes I'm away from my desk or I'm on vacation. I'm going to get up and I'm going to post something on LinkedIn because I decided that's going to be my mode of communication to the world, right? And I dedicated to myself to do that on a daily basis. But understand, I didn't have it ironed out when I first started. I was doing some videos here and there. I was doing some one-liners. I was posting someone else's articles, or I was doing other things. But for me, I use things that I knew about in the past and leverage that information and my knowledge to push me and excel me forward in the race. So I think anyone who's thinking about building a personal brand, analyze where you've been and what you've done and what experience and knowledge you have, and share that with the world. And you'll get some feedback along the way. You may get a little bit of criticism, or you'll get some trolls out there. That's just part of the process, exactly. But you're not going to see success unless you step out of your comfort zone and start doing things that make you feel a little uncomfortable. And you're not going to see a lot of success in the first week, month, even the first year of doing this. But over time, you will, if you're giving value out to the community, such as what you do, Shrey, and you know as well as anybody else does, that success occurs over time. But those chips have to stack on top of each other, and it takes a long time, and you got to have some extreme patience and perseverance to be able to see it. I don't know why other recruiters don't do it. I think there's a few out there that do it, maybe not the Salesforce ecosystem, but other industries. But it's definitely a way that you can stick out because there's not enough people that are doing it. And I'm not saying LinkedIn has to be the only way you can do it. I mean, you could use TikTok, or you could use Instagram or Facebook. I mean, there's 1,000 different channels and mediums you could use. I just chose LinkedIn because I felt the most comfortable there. You don't really see me on Twitter that often. I'm on there once every few weeks. I don't have an Instagram, and I'm not really on Facebook, right? And so I just needed to dedicate myself to one channel, and that's what I advise anyone else to do, Twitter is a great medium for someone to use, especially if you're in the recruiting space. I found a Salesforce Recruiter on Twitter a few weeks ago, and he posts something there every day. And so he's gaining a following and some momentum there, and he's posting thoughts and
What's his
articles
name?
and whatnot. I don't know his name. He just came into my network a few weeks ago. But I've kind of watched him a little bit and seen the traction and some of the posts that he's doing, and he's gaining some momentum. And so I don't, he can, that medium is what he wants to use, and by all means, have at it. And so my point is, you just got to start to get focused at some point, and you got to make a dedication to yourself that you're going to do. It doesn't have to be daily. It can be a weekly post, right? But you can't just stop and start, because when you stop and start, you don't gain any traction or any momentum behind you when you're trying to build up a following and build up a personal brand. Like now for Shrey, it's a little bit different for you. You've been doing it a long time and you took a little bit of a break, but you haven't went anywhere. And so as soon as you start back up again, I'm sure everybody's gonna be re-engaged again with you, and it's gonna be like nothing ever happened. But when you're first starting, as you know, people got to know that you're for real, right? And that you're sincere and you're loyal and you're trustworthy. And then once that happens, and you can't depict how long that takes for that to occur. It's going to occur when it occurs, right? And so it's taken me years and years, because the recruiting space is not really the most trustworthy industry to be in, because of all the mess that happens with being ghosted and all that, right? And so that's why it may take me a little bit longer to gain some traction in the space versus someone who's going to be a developer or architect or whatever industry focus you want to have.
So yeah, and so you just talked about being ghosted. Okay, before this being ghosted thing, let's talk about this. By the way, you have given an amazing advice to all of the people who really want to start putting out content out there. You have mentioned each and every point right in here. This is a short summary which one needs to hear in order to start putting out the content over there. I'm just curious to know how it started for you.
So I think it started with doing some initial
Mm-hmm.
videos. So I did a couple of videos when I was going to Dreamforce, when I was going to the local Salesforce user groups. I think that's when I first started to do a couple of videos, and they were like short 90-second videos, or I was just walking in my neighborhood and something I thought came to mind and I did a video. And then I think I posted a few articles. I wrote a few articles, whether they were book reviews. I think I started with some book reviews, right? Some Salesforce authors wrote a few books, and I read the books and I did a few book reviews, right? And I still do those at time to time too. That hasn't been canceled out of my repertoire of things I want to do. But those are the first things that I started doing. And then I just started to think and maybe even meditate a little bit in the mornings and think about things that have happened in my career or the conversations I'm having with individuals, and start to write down notes and ideas about things I wanted to talk about. And once you kind of focus in on that, the flow of conversations in your head start to appear, comes up with new ideas, new questions to ask. And it took me a long time to get there, right? So I'm not saying, it didn't take me years to be able to narrow that in. And so that was just kind of my personal journey, Shrey, as far as some videos, some book reviews, sharing some articles that I found on LinkedIn. And then at some point I did a transition that says most of my material that I'm going to share is going to be stuff that I come up with myself. Now, it's not always, because sometimes I do come into a writing block, was what they call it, where I can't put anything good content out there for the day. If I do get stuck with that once in a while, then I'll have to find an article and I'll either read that and just put out some key bullet points around the article about ways that I thought it was a valuable article, or I'll just share someone else's post, or I'll come up with something else, just stay active on LinkedIn on a daily basis. But writer's block doesn't, because if you get past that and like, I don't know if this is a good idea or not, I'm just going to share it anyway, just to get through the day and share something. Because the thing you have to think about is, it may not be valuable to you, but it could be valuable to one person. And if you're writing it for one person to accept it and understand it and gain value out of it, then you can call your day complete when it comes to writing a daily blog. At least that's what I've learned, and that's why I hear the other professional bloggers who have consistently see success feel the same way.
That's absolutely correct, and you feel like there is a sense of satisfaction when you actually provide value to any other individual, even if that individual is only one out there. So That I don't know what actually happens, but you feel good about yourself. So yeah, did that happen to you as well?
Exactly, that's right. It does. It does. And all of us have an ego, right? So I don't want to take that out of the equation. And the more acknowledgement I guess we get, the better sometimes we feel. But if you feel like you can provide value to one person, right? And they don't even have to like my post, right? If they read it, sometimes I get, people don't always like my post because they're worried about what someone else will see, and I don't. That's fine. They may comment to me specifically on a direct IM and say, Chris, man, I really appreciate that post. It really hit home. I didn't want to comment on it. I didn't want to like it because I was worried about what my employer would say, but that's spot on to the way I'm thinking. And when I see those, then that tells me that I'm doing the right thing, right? Because it is helping people out. But to your point, Shrey, if you just get one person to acknowledge it, and it makes you feel better that you're doing a good job spreading knowledge out there.
Great. So let's talk about something different and a little exciting, especially for me
Sure.
and the audience that I have on Salesforce Health channel. And that is, how is hiring different in US than in India? Like if you have
Sure.
you must be having a good idea about it, I guess.
Well, I know a little bit about the hiring in India because I think you have to put in like is it a 2 month notice before you can leave your current employer? Is that the dynamics there? Or was in the U.S.
Two
customary
weeks.
tradition is
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks, 2 weeks notice, and some give a little bit longer if they feel like they need to. Some give less. Some give a week notice. Some say could be a Friday afternoon. Hey, boss man, boss woman, sorry, but today's my last day. This new company wants me to start Monday morning. I committed to that. Now that's kind of an unprofessional way of going out. You kind of burn some bridges along the way. The Salesforce ecosystem isn't that big, so it doesn't take that long for your name to get out there that the way that you carried yourself when you decided to leave wasn't very professional. But then you also have companies that will terminate somebody the same day too, right? So it goes both ways. And so traditionally a 2 week notice period once you accept another offer. But what I'm hearing and seeing in the space recently is that companies or individuals sometimes are accepting an offer, but they've accepted an offer somewhere else in parallel, and now they're determining which one they want to accept and which one they want to go to. And so they go to company A and accept that offer. They accept the company B's offer. They don't show up for company B when it's the start date. They instead just ghost that company and go directly to company A, which is something really unheard of,
So
I
this is something that
guess,
happens in US, or
before.
this is something
But
that you?
yeah, now, I haven't had that experience happen to me directly, but it has something that I've seen and heard talked about. Now, what I've seen happen and happened directly to me is I had placed an individual with a new company, but that individual did not put it in his notice with his other company. And so what he decided to do is work both positions in parallel. And so that took about a day for the new employer to figure out what was going on because the individual wasn't answering his phone, wasn't being responsive to emails, wasn't on the calls that they had for the daily Scrum meetings. And so the individual decided to do more than what I guess he could take on. And I guess they gave him a few weeks to try and iron it out. And eventually he had terminated from this new company because they realized he didn't really leave his old company. So that type of mess happens as well. And that's something I've been directly affected with. And I had no idea, when the individual tells me that they're leaving their current company to start the new company, that assumption is that happened. Like I don't know how to verify that happened other than trusting the individual that they said that they were going to do what they said they were going to do, right? And so if they do anything else than that, then it really is a blemish on them from professionalism standpoint.
Let me tell you one thing. In India as
Um,
well, this is
sure.
something that is happening a lot, and in fact, this thing is booming up since this COVID thing happened. Because of COVID, a lot of people are working
Yeah.
remotely.
Yeah.
A lot of them are actually trying to pick up multiple jobs at the same time, and in fact, when they are interviewing for another position, and when the final round comes up, when the closing needs to happen, what are they saying? We are willing to work with you, but we are not going to leave our job. So why have you wasted this much of
Oh
time
wow.
of an interviewer as well as the recruiter who worked so hard for you to close for this particular company? So this is happening a lot right now, like almost everywhere. And you also are saying that in US also this is happening. So yeah,
Well, I'm not hearing it. I haven't heard that scenario where they have put the ultimatum on the new employer that says, not to tell them. Like, basically, you're saying that the new hire is telling the new employer that they're not leaving the old company and they can either take it or leave it. I haven't heard that, but anything can happen in this day and age. But instead, I think they're trying to do both at the same time without telling
Yeah, I mean,
anybody
this is something
and
that is
hoping for
also
the best
happening.
that
I
they
mean,
can run it.
apart from what you
Yeah.
said that is happening over there, this is also happening. Like, people are saying that I am working with this
Yeah.
company, but I can do it part time for you, or I can do it for you. I can manage both the works because I'm doing it remotely. I do not have to worry about any of the employers at the end of the day. So yeah, and they want to make more money out of it.
Right, right. And here's the thing, that the demand is so great that maybe some employers are willing to accept that just to
You're
get the work
absolutely
done,
correct with that.
right? It's like,
Yes.
so it is. But I've had contractors who have started a new contract position and felt like they could take that contract position as well as two or three others, and then the same scenario happens. Like, the employers, most of the time, they're going to terminate the contract because they need this individual dedicated 40 hours a week. And if they can't be dedicated to get the work done, then they'll rather just come to me and say, Chris, let's let so-and-so go, find me a replacement, versus trying to, in the contractor market, it's a little bit, I guess there's more luxury to be able to do that because there's more talent to be had when it comes to contract, and the hiring process doesn't take so long. Like, I can get a contractor started
A week.
within 3 to 5 days, right? Yeah, a week basically. If they interview them and go through a few rounds in 2 to 3 days, I can do a background check, I can do a drug screen, I can do an education verification. That takes 3 to 5 days if they're a U.S. citizen, and then get them started. Whereas the hiring process usually takes a little bit longer to negotiate the salary, get them to acknowledge the offer letter, go through the background checks and internal personnel and all that stuff. So that takes 2 to 3 weeks to go through that process. But yeah, it's messy. I mean, the whole employment side of the house right now, Shrey, with the remote. And the COVID and the demand, like, it's like a perfect storm right now. And so candidates are, I get it. They're trying to do the
This
perfect
is
thing
the
they can
exact
do,
word
right?
that justifies or that satisfies the situation that is going on. It's a perfect storm that's going on out there, and even the employers and the clients do not have any other option just other than accepting the conditions and the terms that the individuals are putting onto them. But how long do you think this is going to go on?
Well, based on Salesforce growth and the projections for the next few years still, I think in Salesforce specifically, and if it's kind of catch-22 for employers too, because if you think about it, they probably don't always want to have remote employees, but employees only want remote setup, even post-COVID. Like, if it's the new way of working, and remote is going to be what the majority
The workforce.
of job applicants want, and employers, and so this whole trust, and again, we're kind of calling out some very edge cases between you and I. There's a lot of loyal people that are dedicated to one job and one job only, and so I don't want to feel
But they
like
are also
this
getting
is a
motivated by the people
widespread.
who are looking for multiple options at the same time. So I mean,
I know,
this is
I
how it
know.
goes.
You're right. It's putting a bad precedent. But there was no way when I was working full-time delivery, I can't even balance one job, much less having two or three jobs at a time. I mean, one job enough is draining me mentally and emotionally doing what I'm doing. And on top of being remote, and this was when I was on site on projects. If I was remote trying to manage that on top of two or three other clients in parallel, I don't have the energy to be able to do that. So the people that are doing it and are successful, my hat's off to them for being able to achieve that. And then one other thing, Shrey, I think a lot of times the work that's being given to the individual is not being done by the individual, right? So they're parsing it out to some other team members along the way. And so all they have to do is make sure that it looks somewhat in the ballpark of what needs to be done and passing it over as their own work, where it's actually someone
Exactly. And let me
else's.
tell you what is the employer standpoint right now onto this. So we have got a team of more than 150 people working with us. So I know a little bit about it. That how we.
Yeah.
So yeah, how we are taking care of all of these things. So let me tell you. So what we
Yeah.
do is we are keeping 3 people on a position where only like two people of average capability or one person who is really, really good at his work can do that job. And why we are doing that, let me tell you that as well. Number one, this remote thing wants like more people to produce the same level of productivity that one or two people can do, right? We need three people to do that same work, which can be easily done by one or two people itself because of the remote setting and everything. Because a lot of time goes into the communication and collaboration itself rather than the actual work. Number one. Number two, due to the crunch of the talent that is going on right now out there in the market, what we want is we want to replicate people as soon as possible and as much as possible, because we are pretty much sure that we'll not be able to retain all of the people, or in fact a majority of the people who gain experience along the time. And when this experience when people start getting experience, they get a lot of other opportunities and they switch. So what we want is we want someone who already knows, or who is already at the level of the person who is trying to leave, so that we can take care of the job that we already have from one of our clients. So this is one of the reasons why we are having more people onto the same job that can be done by one or two people itself, because of the higher demand right now going into the market. And this is the same reason why people have less work in a day, and we are not even realizing it, because they are sitting at their home doing whatever they want to do, and they are just showcasing that we are working a lot, but instead they are working on another job rather than the ones that they are assigned for in here. So yeah.
Right. And so with that type of setup, though, how do you determine what to charge the client, right? Are you charging them for three individuals or one individual? Like you have to get, you have to be creative, I guess, as far as how the output of three people translates into one billable resource back to the customer.
So
right?
in this case, like there are two choices. Number one, either you take an assignment as a project and you do that if the requirements are pretty clear and they're perfectly solid, which do not need any reshaping or anything. Then you take that as a project, put as many resources or as less resources as possible for you to deliver that job in the time frame that is discussed or that is decided between you two. But if the work is in a agile model, then in that case, if there are three people working onto a project, typically what happens is we charge only for two people, not more than that, or sometimes only for one person, but the price is a little higher than the average price that we charge for. And that's how we are compensating everything. So, and I think this is exactly how other companies must be doing it. Because why a client would be paying more to get that same job done? Like he or she doesn't care about how many people you're putting onto that project. At the end of the day, they want that job to get done. If someone else can do it with
That's
one
right.
person,
That's right.
Like you should also do it with one person. So that's the way it's going on, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've been able to figure it out and had success with the amount of churn that's happening right now in the employment market, and trying to make the best of it based on the circumstances you're
Yeah,
up
and at
against.
the end of the day, I think so. I have an edge, like other than the people, like I have an edge over other companies out there in the market, and that edge is I have got a training capacity. Not a lot of companies actually want to train people. They don't want to invest into people. So that's the
That's
thing
right.
that a lot of companies don't want to do, and that's the thing that I have mastered along the years, and that's the exact job with which I started my career. So I think that's why we are able to
Wow. Yeah.
mitigate the things that are going on right now with every other employer.
Sure. No, that's spot on, Trey, as far as bringing new talent in and training them up, and then to be able to deploy them under some mentorship or someone that's a little bit more senior to be able to get the work done. I think that model works well. I think it also works in the consulting world in the US. I don't really see it happening too much on the industry side. Maybe it happens a little bit here and there. But basically, the model that you're running is a very sustainable one, and it gives those newcomers an opportunity that they may not would have
Yeah,
gotten
because
otherwise.
so you must be having opportunities from a lot of companies. What is the ratio of freshers getting the job and experienced people getting the job? Like how would you rate that? What is the ratio?
Yeah. Well, companies don't really hire me from an external recruiter standpoint for newcomers, for freshers. They typically will find that through other means. I mean, by posting on LinkedIn, or their network, or know somebody that knows somebody. So what happens when I get pulled in is going to be typically for those senior level personnel that their internal recruiting department couldn't find, the hiring managers don't have the time to hunt for it, and they're willing to pay me a recruiting fee to be able to find those people, right? And those people are usually few and far between. They're getting hit up all day, every day by recruiters and by internal recruiters and by hiring managers. And so, that's where I get pulled into a recruiting obligation or opportunity, essentially. For the freshers, sometimes I get hit up by people on my LinkedIn network say, hey, Chris, if you know anybody that has 6 months experience, I'm not willing to pay a fee for that, but if you could share that position with your network, or know somebody who might have that experience, can you do a virtual introduction? And I'm always willing to do that, because I think what goes around comes around, and I think eventually that person who's a hiring manager, even though they can't pay me a recruiting fee for this position, maybe they can in the future, or they'll go somewhere else and be able to use my services. So I'm a big fan of showing that loyalty and being able to help those that need help. But as far as day-to-day recruiting on the fresher side, those just aren't typically I get given to me from a recruiting standpoint. But the one thing I do a lot of times is when I have newcomers come to me and say, Chris, I'm interested in this company. They have a position open. I see you're connected to 2 or 3 individuals there. Could you go ahead and do a LinkedIn introduction to those so I can get to know them, hear a little more about the projects they're working on, about the company, about the industry? And so by all means, you should leverage a recruiter that's willing to do that just to give you a step up in the process.
Great. So okay, I kind of understood how the hiring thing goes on in the US, and I can compare that to India. But I have a very interesting question for you, which a lot of people
Sure.
want an answer for, and that is, a lot of people from India are looking or want a job in USA. Is this
Yeah, yeah.
something possible? And if yes, then what's the roadmap, or how's the roadmap? How the roadmap looks like, and what are the
Yeah.
prerequisites, or what are some things that they need to work upon in order to get that? Because, and you must be you. There
Yeah.
must not be a single day in your life in which there's no person from India reaching you out to get a job in USA, right?
Yeah, I get that a lot. Well, there's India or Europe or the Philippines, but India more than
Mm-hmm.
others are asking for that. And it's not really a space that I play in, because I have never in 5 years had a client say, Chris, we want to recruit someone from India to the US. We'll sponsor their visa. We'll take care of getting them over here. We'll do all that. That's a lot to ask, right? And so they'll just try to find a U.S. citizen or H-1 that is already here to be able to sponsor or whatever. So from a direct relationship standpoint, those opportunities, I don't know if they even exist, right? But if you are someone in India looking for an opportunity to come to the U.S., a couple of things come to mind. If you're currently working for an employer that has offices in both India and the US, and you've already put some time in to that employer, let's say a few years in, can you see if there's a transfer opportunity to be able to come to the US and work, right? And you may have to ask 10 times before it actually goes through, but if you're dedicated to the position, you're dedicated to the company, you have some loyalty there, having to ask every couple months to see if an opportunity happens to come about, that could be one way. The other option is to come to school here on your master's, right? Again, and then after your master's, you have OPT, right? And then you have your
What's
OPT for I think
OPT?
2 to 3 years after graduate. Optical practical, so I think it's
Something like
option practical
internship.
training. It's exactly like an internship. But after you graduate from the U.S., if you're a foreign student, you get I think it's 2 years with an extension for a third year to work on OPT in order to be basically work for an employer in the U.S. without getting sponsorship, right? So the employer will take you on and pay you a salary. You're basically an employee, right, for 2 to 3 years on this OPT status before you need a valid H-1 work status to work here after that. Okay. Again, I'm not United States Customs Immigration Services, but this is how I understand that it works. So that's another option. And that's an option that tend to works out for most people, right? So be able to get to school here on a master's degree, and then from there, be able to work in an OPT type of setup. Or the TCS, the Cognizant, the Wipros of the world. There's a lot of folks in the US that have worked for those companies and also have transferred from India to the US, or have worked for those companies after they finished their master's degree in the US as well. So that's another option. The other option is get married to a U.S. citizen or green card holder in the U.S., right? Which will make you eligible to work in the U.S. as well. So that's an option that I don't want to ignore. I'm not sure if that's the right option to be able to choose, but I know that it happens. And I know people that have done it before, so I know it's a valid approach, maybe not the most legal approach to take, but it is a approach. Yeah, so it's hard, Shrey. I get it and I understand it, and it's just not. There's not really one particular path that individual can take to find success. But I think that the masters, I see more people
opting for
finding success than others. Yeah.
And have you seen this third option happening? Have you came across a situation in which someone married someone who is a US citizen just to get a job in US?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of times those are arranged marriages, right? So they're arranged marriage, and the individual was from India, then he came to the U.S., and he or she had been here for 15 years, and now a green card holder or USC, and they have an arranged marriage, and it's someone back in India, and they come back, and they're a married couple now, and then there's a certain status I think that when that happens too, that the individual, the spouse is in, but I know they're legally able to work under those conditions as well. And not to get too down into the black market, but I know those services that are out there that will also, there's third-party services that I've heard about. I've never, paid any attention to them that would actually, you pay a service to get you married to come over to the, and again, I'm not sure. Obviously, it's not legal, and I think, you'll probably end up, if you've got found out about, you get deported, and
There are some legal hassles
you
that
may
you
have
face.
some financial penalties. Yeah, you can go there's imprisonment. There's just a lot that goes on to that situation, but I've heard that it happens, something like that.
Great. Uh, Amazing.
You may want to edit that part out of your video,
What did you
Shrey.
say?
I said you may want to edit this piece of your
You want
video
me to
out.
edit this
So,
out?
I don't want the. No, I'm just kidding. I don't care. I'm just saying the immigration services maybe give me a call here in a few weeks if they hear this
Probably they will
video.
not, and even if they do, we are just discussing it. We are not doing it ourselves. Great. What was the funniest and weirdest thing that you have seen in your life being a recruiter? I mean, if you remember any of those instances, which was the weirdest situation or the funniest situation for you as a recruiter?
I mean, it seems like we're always hitting some unique situations. I think one is probably not the most unique, but it is a situation where a company hires somebody, and the individual that they did a video session with and confirmed to start wasn't the same person that showed up in the office on day one.
That happens a lot.
Right? And so that is a comical. It's not really comical because I gotta have the customer call me and ask me what, like, they thought I was part of the deal, and I was like, I had no idea this was going to happen. The person that you interviewed with is the same person I interviewed with. We have a Skype video, we have the identification, the photo ID, and everything. Between that person being interviewed and this person showing up at your front door, something changed, and I had no part of it. So that's one unfortunate situation. That one, it's been a little while since that one occurred to me because no one's really coming into the office anymore. So it's been a few years.
How often did you think
else?
that this happens?
Just, I don't think it happens that often, but occasionally it will. I don't know, 1 out of 50 maybe,
So let me
something
tell
like
you,
that. And
there
usually
are
that's
some
on
companies
contract.
out there
Contractor
which
side.
call themselves as training companies, and they actually provide interview services for which they charge their client, and they show up onto the interview. They dress up like the person for whom they are giving the interview. They just
Wow.
look similar to that. they give the interview, they get the job position, and they send the other person. And companies don't even realize. And I'm telling it to you, this happens a lot when the company size is really big. When the recruiters or whosoever is part of the HR and and the person who actually interviewed that person is never ever going to meet that particular person. Like let's say the TCS, the Wipro, Infosys, like these training companies actually provide this service to help these people get into these companies. And once they are into these companies, I don't think there's a moment when they come back. All what they do is they get a job, they do it by just googling it, or they just take the help from here and there. And if they are getting stuck, then they again charge these people to give the help required to do their job, and that's a job of a particular person.
Wow.
So this is an actual industry that's going on. And I was actually shocked when I heard about this, that okay, this is something that happens. And they told me that this is very common here in so there's a city in Hyderabad. If you're aware about it, it's very near to Bangalore, and it's again Google's office, Amazon's office is all set up in Hyderabad in India. So there are certain companies who are actually doing this, and they're charging hefty amount to do that.
Wow. Usually, and it's kind of a toss-up. If the company brings the individual on and like they realize that this person can't do the work, that doesn't take long to figure out. Sometimes companies say, well, this is, I don't want to hire again for it, so let's just keep that person busy and productive and have him or he or she figured out along the way, and let's be done with it. So it's kind of a bad situation for a company you have to face as far as what to do.
So this happens a lot with the bigger giants, where like people do not even know people more than their team, right? Because the company size is so big, the one who interviewed probably will never meet that guy who he or she interviewed. So that's the right target for these kind of people who are looking for these services to get a job.
Man, we're giving all kinds of advice to the counterfeiters out there. how to get married illegally, how to get a job in a big company when you not have the skill set.
I think what we're trying to we're just trying to discuss what are the things that they shouldn't opt for.
I know, it's funny.
But anyways, the one who's gonna figure it out.
That's right. That's exactly right. So I think that's probably the most awkward situation that I've been in. There's always, especially between the candidate signing an offer letter and starting, there's always things that can happen. And sometimes we lose candidates along the way. They decide to go somewhere else. They decide not to show up. They decided to stay with their current company. So we deal with that sometimes. Sometimes a candidate will go out to the market to find what their value is and interview and get an offer letter, and then use that as evidence back to their current employer to show what they're worth and stay with their current employer just to get a pay hike, right? So that's kind of an awkward situation. Like I recruit somebody, they're interested in the company, they get the offer letter, they decided that they want that offer letter just to present back to their current employer, and then I lose faith in the whole situation because of what the candidate did. But I get it. Sometimes they have to show that evidence to be able to get a pay hike in their current position. It's just not really the most professional way to go about it.
You won't believe what's going on right now in India, especially into the Salesforce market. What people are doing is, if they're working on X, right, with an employer, let's say ABC, and then now they're going to a DEF company and giving the interview. And after giving the interview, they're asking, I'm looking for 2X. And this company says, I'm not sure we'll be able to give you 2X or not, but we'll be giving you 1.8. No problem. Give it to me. They get the offer letter. They go to now XYZ company and they show it to them that I already have an offer of 1.8x from this particular company. Are you willing to give me 2.5x? So they're like, no, I'm not willing to give you 2.5x. So, okay, no problem. Give me 2.4. Okay, no, we can't give you that. Okay, give me 2.2. Okay, they'll get 2.2x and then they'll show it to their current employer. I've got an offer from 2.2. Are you willing to give me this much? So this is going on a huge level. And in fact, one candidate has got offer letters from at least 4 to 5 companies on an average who is seeking a job right now into the Salesforce market in India. And it's going like anything. It's happening like anything. There are at least 3 to 4 offer letters which every individual has got, in which all what they have done is showing the offer letter from one place to another, to another, to another, to another, and at the end, getting the one which is paying them the most, because they right now have the demand, and they need the individual, or they need the candidate at any cost, and they're just giving it to them. So that's
Wow.
exactly what's happening, and it's really dirty that's going on right now. What do you think is the side effect of this on that particular individual, or on that particular candidate? Like, is it a good thing to do or not?
I don't personally. I don't think so. I mean, because as a company, you decide to employ that individual. What's to say 2, 3, 6 months down the road he or she doesn't pull the same games again, right? I mean, it just shows lack of loyalty and trust and professionalism along the way. And I think a lot of employers will say, I'm not playing this game, right? This is our best and final offer. Take it or leave it. If you don't want it, we'll find someone else. And I know I say that very lightly because I know it's hard to find someone else with the same skill set of this particular person. But, at some point you got to take a stance and draw a line in the sand and say, we're not here to mess around with these shenanigans that you're pulling here. Enough's enough. Either you take it or you don't. There you move on, and we'll move on and shake hands and go our separate ways. But if you decide to employ someone that's already doing this from the onset, to me, history might repeat itself in a few months down the road, and you got to go through that again. Like, why would you waste your time and energy as an employer dealing with that? And to your point as well, if they don't have any much choice. I'm like, well, that may be true to some extent, but I know in the U.S. the demand is as high as it's ever been, and most professional hiring managers will tell that candidate go kick rocks basically down somewhere else because they're not playing that. But that's I just feel like what your worth is your worth. Like, if your employer's trying to lowball you on an offer letter, then it wasn't the right opportunity. Go somewhere else that's going to hire you for what your salary and what your experience warrants, and don't play games going back and forth. If it's too low, it's too low, and tell them, if you told an employer what you're looking for from the onset, that would cut down the games altogether. Right? And so if the employer doesn't know, then that's their problem, in my opinion. They're not, they need to keep a pulse on the market. And so if this individual is worth 2 times X, whatever they're currently getting paid, then that should have been the offer that was presented to them at the very beginning. And this is my best and final offer. You can take it or you can go somewhere else and be done with it. And so I don't, that's a tough situation there,
But
Shrey.
employers right now do not actually have a choice than to accept all of these things, because they're running short of the people that they need in order to complete the job or deliver the job that they have already taken onto their plate. So now, even if that's why the market starts bleeding. That's how actually the market starts bleeding. Person from X comes to Y, and person from Y comes to X, and this is the whole cycle that goes around, where everyone's bleeding, and there comes a certain point in which everyone says, or all of these companies, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, everyone stops at a particular moment, and that's exactly when this will stop. But until unless this demand thing gets the required supply, I don't think it's going to stop. And people take.
And the individual has to give a 2-month notice, though, right? So if they do get hired somewhere, they have to stay with their current employer for at least 2 months. Is that correct?
Depends. Actually depends. I mean,
Okay.
it completely depends on to the company that they're joining, and what exactly are the policies of that particular company. There's no standard policy thing that is there in India when it comes to a job. Every company has got a different policy altogether. So it depends. And
Man, that's just a very rocky situation that you're up against. Like, I don't in the U.S. I don't think we are at that point. We're not that volatile, right? And so, the candidates here would use my example as far as taking an offer letter and go back to their current employer. But I don't think most employers are going to entertain much more than that, right? Meaning showing 4 or 5 different offer letters for different companies and going back and forth 2 or 3 times with the individual. They just don't have the the luxury or the energy to be able to do that. At least that's how I feel about the U.S.
Yeah, I
system.
mean, and I think let me tell you why this is happening and where exactly this is happening. The new generation of the workforce, especially the people of my age or relative to my age, all what they care about is more money, less work. They want the maximum comfort. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Forget about professionalism, forget about ethics, forget about morals. All what we are looking for is the best
Mm-hmm.
money and the least work that we can get, so that we can enjoy our life. And that's the right motto that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people are looking for. And they're not actually thinking it in a
Right.
long term perspective. Everyone's thinking about a short term duration in which they can like they want to earn the maximum money that they can, but they are forgetting this thing that they're if they want to go long term onto anything, or if they actually want to grow exponentially, they need to stick to one place, have some patience in order to build trust to the company or to the organization that for which they are working for. And only if you have the
Yeah.
trust and loyalty and the ethics to work for that organization, then only you'll be getting a position to lead some other people or to lead something which will eventually put you in a position of the maximum compensation and the maximum responsibility, name, as well as the power if someone is looking for that. But a lot of people right now, so okay, I had an interaction with a lot of people who are 10 years older than me or even 15 years older than me. Their mindset was completely different than the new generation workforce that's coming up. Their mindset was to
Mm-hmm.
get into a company,
Mm-hmm.
go to the top, like be there in a secure position at the highest compensation and do amazing things. But right now the mindset is completely different.
Right.
People want to switch jobs as soon as possible. In fact, I have a student of mine, I was having a conversation with her and she just said that it's been 6 to 8 months now. I think it's time for me to switch again. And I was like, okay. And I had no words to say to her because she looked pretty determined about it. I don't know how I can actually explain them the power of uh, thinking long term. Like we all want instant gratification.
Yeah.
Almost 99% of the people or 95% of the
Mm-hmm.
people of my age are looking for instant gratification in everything in their life. Everything. They're not thinking about going long term onto anything. How do you think we can help
Wow.
all of these people?
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard. It's hard to relate to, unfortunately, for me, Shrey. I'm over 40, so I come from a different walk of life. I can't, I don't have a lot to. I can't just relate. I just don't know it. I mean, I see it, and these conversations are helpful for you to help educate me on it. Um, one thing that I see though in the U.S. is hiring managers, if they see a poor track record on your resume, they're not interested. They don't, they will find someone else that has a little bit more loyalty. And so the average, I guess, years of tenure here is, I guess, 2 years, 2 to 3 years as far as employment and when people are especially in IT and Salesforce. But if you have a track record for 4 to 6 months, job after job, company after company, I'm even scared to present that individual unless I have a great story to provide to the hiring manager or to HR about why this individual is a job hopper. I don't feel comfortable presenting that individual because I know the first thing they're going to ask me is like, Chris, why is this person not showing any type of professionalism or loyalty towards their current employer? I don't want them to do the same thing to me and us spend a lot of time and energy and invest in this person and then them to leave in 4 to 6 months. No, thank you. Right. And so, but the new generation, that may be the way of working, and companies are going to have to accommodate that, like you're mentioning, just to be able to get the talent in. And we set expectations that this individual is only good for a short duration of time. Milk it for what it's worth, both on the candidate side and the employee side, and then when they part ways, do it all over again. But that just feels like you're losing a lot of integrity along the way and a lot of human capital within the organization when you have so much churn.
So I have a question. You're able to hear me, right? Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah. Can you still hear me?
I
Yeah.
have a simple question onto this. What would the employer do if the whole lot of the people, or like all of the people out there of that particular age, are doing the same thing, they have no other option than hiring all of these people, forgetting about the integrity of the individual to stay in an organization, because all of them are doing like this. 90% of the people are doing like this. In fact, they think that we are we do not want to climb the corporate ladder, we want to do things differently. And by thinking about it, they are choosing the steps for which they'll get a nice growth or a decent growth in a short term, but in a longer term they are actually hurting themselves professionally. And I see no way of teaching all of these people that what exactly is the value of staying in a company for a longer term, or doing something amazing for a longer term, how it actually pays you off. So I don't know how to do that.
Right, right. That's a good point. Right. And well, it's like if why don't you just become a contractor then? And so if you're a contractor, expectations are set from the onset, right? You're a contractor. We risk losing you. You risk losing us, right? And so we're now a little bit more on an equal playing field because contract labor can be cut off in a day, and they can give you notice in the same day too. So maybe that's the right approach as far as the gig economy goes, and for these up and comers who want to jump ship after a few months or 6 months, whatever the case may be, just to go in and be a contractor. And so when they do that, the company doesn't have unrealistic expectations about losing them, and the contractor doesn't have unrealistic expectations about being cut loose if they're not performing or if the project's over, whatever the case may be. So that may be what employers should do to help make up the difference.
But there are
Um,
comparatively very less
you
positions
know,
of contractors than of full-time employees. So, and not all of the people have got the right skill
yeah,
set to
yeah,
actually be a contractor. You need to showcase the right skill sets to get
that's
a
true.
contract job, which a lot of people are not capable of getting
That's true.
actually.
Right. And some things that companies are doing, which I think is smart, is to offer equity into the company that vests over time. And so I have a customer right now who's a startup consulting firm, and they're offering equity, and it vests a little bit every month over a 4-year duration, right? And so, they want people in it for the long haul, right? And so they're going to give a little piece of the overall
Valuation.
company
Hmm.
pie. Exactly, to help, I guess, keep you there, right? And the same thing, like Salesforce is the same. A lot of big companies that offer equity and stock options have
People
that
not staying with
mentality,
that as
right?
well.
And they,
They get bored.
no, I'm just saying that's an option, right? I mean, some may not care about that, but having the golden handcuffs is what they call it, as far as just trying to keep people. I think it does keep some people around, but to your point, it probably doesn't work universally against all individuals, regardless of
So
that.
I highly appreciate you picking up this topic, which is golden handcuff. I have been teasing this topic to a lot
Sure.
of people in a lot of different situations. I would be very, very happy if you would share what exactly this golden handcuff means to all of the people watching us.
Sure. So, in my mind, golden handcuffs are basically when you're with a company and they keep waving a new carrot in front of you, right, and trying to keep you there, right? So the golden handcuffs, basically the handcuffs they have you on or in, keeps you employed there, and they're golden because eventually that time you served at a company will pay off either through equity payoff as far as getting dividends out of the company, or the company getting acquired by another company, you get paid off your shares for that. And so it's a way to, you call it golden handcuffs, because you can't go anywhere because they keep continuing to give you more to stick around for another year and another year and another year, just by dangling this carrot and stick type of behavior in front of you to keep you loyal to the firm. Which it's a good way to do things, I guess, if you want to invest in your people and continue to invest in human capital and let them know that they have a big payoff coming in the end. Like, pensions were a big thing in the U.S. They're not so much anymore, but a lot of companies, a lot of people would work for a company, especially in the public service sector, where you work there 20 to 30 years and you build a pension, and that you can basically retire early because you built out this pension fund that the company has paid into
401k.
for you. that will, well, yeah, it's another form of 401k. It's just called a pension essentially, because the 401k usually happens, within the first, when you first get employed, it's an employment match system. So you put in X and the employer puts in Y to be able to match your contribution. That's into the stock market. And then as well as pensions is just saying, like, if you work for, like, teachers often have a pension fund in the educational system here in the US. That if you work for 10 years and you retire, we're going to pay you, I don't know, $200 a month for the rest of your life, because you put in your service as an educational instructor. I'm making these numbers up. I don't know
Yeah, but
exactly
but
what the
but that's
payoffs
how
are and what the
it actually
tenure
works. Yeah.
is. Yes, yeah, exactly. That you put in your loyalty in the educational system, and it's happened in oil and gas, in the oil and gas sector that I'm a part of here in Houston. I've had managers when I used to be in delivery that retire at their mid 50s because they had worked at a particular company for 25, 30 years. And when they retire, they get like 60% of what their salary was until they die, right? And so that was definitely keeping, because you can retire early, you can pay 65% of your annual salary, which is plenty to live on, and Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all the benefits you might have as a retired individual. That would definitely keep, again, this is old school thinking, right? That doesn't
Attract
really,
any,
like you said, apply
it doesn't
anymore,
attract
because
talent
then
anymore.
all bets are off now with today's need to have it right now. Let's give it to me now, or don't
Yeah,
give it
yeah,
to me at
that's
all.
the
Like
that's the way
that's
it's going on. And by the way, this is the same thing that happens in India. If you like go into a government job, so the very highly skilled talent and very high, like highly intelligent people in India, forget about all of these other industries and just try to focus into getting a job into the government sector. Number one, because it's secure, you'd never get fired almost, and until unless you do a crime or something like that. And second thing is you get pension. So yeah, it's a safe and secure job. But I don't think people of new generation of people, I think we are millennials and then Gen Zs, which are coming up, are not actually looking for all of these things. They want it all right now and right here.
right. Well, I mean, to each his own, and if they have career success doing that, and that's the way that employers are able to handle the individual's needs, and find success with that, then hey, then more power to them. Um, it's just a new way of thinking that I just haven't had a lot of experience with yet, because of where I am, and the hiring managers that I talk to are usually my age, and the people that are recruited are usually my age or close to it, and let's just say 30,
Mm-hmm.
35 plus. So kind of just a different way of working and operating and mentality. And now if I stay in recruiting for another 20 years, I will have to, I may start having to experience some of the things that you're referring to, and I'll just have to shift myself mentally to understand that paradigm.
Got it. I have another question for you. Can you tell me the number one reason that you come across whenever you find a candidate who is willing to switch their profile? Like, let's talk about Peter again. There must be a lot of Peter that starts coming to you to look for another job or that are open to for a newer job. What is the number one reason, like amongst all of the other reasons, because of which someone starts looking for a different job than the one that they're doing right now?
Yeah. A couple of things come to mind is, one, they're being paid under market, right? And so, as we know, typically, in order to get your substantial pay hikes, it's going to be going to another company, right? And so that's probably the number one reason I think people are getting underpaid in their current situation, to make a change, because they know they can get a 10, 15, 20% pay hike going elsewhere. Now, that's not to say they can't go to their current employer and tell them, have that conversation with them and see if there's any way that they can adjust their salary to be able to stay put. But usually they find it easier just to go elsewhere than have that uncomfortable conversation. Or maybe they have that conversation and the employer says, Chris, come back to me 6 months or a year or 2 years down the road and we'll talk about it. And like the employee saying, well, I don't want to wait that long like you're saying, I'll just go ahead and find it now instead of waiting, right? The other situation, a lot of times an employee goes into an opportunity expecting something, expecting X responsibilities, right? It's been defined for them. That's what they were expected to do. They get in, and it's completely different than what was being told to them when they were going through the interview process, right? Their responsibilities have changed. They're doing something they're not even comfortable doing. The requirements of them are just completely off the mark from where they want to go in their career. Then they'll start looking. They'll probably they may have a conversation internally to see if they can get back on track. If not, then they will come to the job market and look for something else that more aligns with their level of responsibilities. And then there's also, like I said, third option is management change, right? They have some changes internally. They have a new manager. They get assigned a different group of people. The dynamics of the work environment have changed, causing them to look elsewhere. Now, COVID may be a good example where we're seeing some of the major companies in the US wanting folks to come back to the office. Well, that doesn't sit too well with a lot of people. And so we've seen this type of new mentality now that says, if you want me back in the office, I'm just going to go, I'm not interested in that. I'm going to go look for, so it's called the Great Resignation. You may have seen a headline about that over the last, 6 months. It's called the Great Resignation right now because of what employers are wanting employees to do. Employees aren't having it. They're going back to the job market to find something else that's going to be aligned with what they want to do as far as remote working capabilities. So I think those 3 or 4 options are what I'm seeing the most right now, Shrey, as far as why changes occur within an individual to make a move somewhere else.
That's an amazing description that you have given in like sweet 3 points actually. And the number one, which you said, is basically they're looking for a hike. Number two, what you have said is they are not actually getting the opportunities that they thought that they're gonna get, or that they were promised that they're gonna get. And the third one that you said is a change in management,
Right.
which they're not comfortable with. That's the one. What I think in the number one is people are not, and you said that as well. People are not willing to have the conversation with their current employer, uh, like and just
Yeah.
and I'm telling it to you. It is way easier to go to your employer and ask for more responsibilities in terms of the compensation increase. And a lot of people who actually want to grow more and actually cares about their people would be willing to give them the hike that they are looking for. And a lot of times it doesn't happen as well if the person is like, I mean, there are different dynamics which works around, but I think if the employer is actually looking to grow and is the one who actually cares about the person who is working with them. And if the person who is working for the X company and going to the employer and asking that I am willing to take up more responsibilities, and I'm just willing to get this much hike, I think a lot of people would be willing to give that. But there is one part that I think like gets missed when they want a hike. They go to the employer and they show another offer letter and they say that, okay, this is what we are getting right now in the market. Are you willing to give this or not? So this looks like someone putting a gun on your head, like, pay me this much money or I'll leave. I think this is a bad way of going about it. Rather than, what they should do is, sir, I am whatever, like let's say I am working for you, so I'll come to Chris, look, I mean, what do you think about how my performance is going on? So Chris is like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you're doing decent, fine. What do you think are the things that I can improve on, or what are the responsibilities that you think I can take on that will relieve some of your stress, or that will actually help us grow our organization? If if individuals
Right.
or candidates will have these two simple questions asked from their employers, and like in exchange of that, if they're willing to get a hike into the same organization, I think they'll be able to get that. But a lot of people are actually missing this point. Instead, what they're doing is they're just putting gun onto the current employer and asking, are you willing to give this much money to me or not? If not, I'll be leaving, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And at that point, the employer knows that you've already looked elsewhere. So it's like you're doing things
Hmm.
backwards instead of being upfront about the situation and what you're looking for. Like if you go to the employer first and they say, sorry, Shrey, we can't do anything about you. I appreciate your performance. Here's some other things that I would like to see you do. Let's revisit this in 3 months. Then that may not be the exact answer you want to hear, but it's at least you've planted the seed in my head that you're not completely satisfied with your current salary and responsibilities. So I need to have it as a good employer and manager and leader to start thinking about what I can do to keep you, right? And so now it's on me to, I need a little bit of time, right? I need 3 months or 2 months or whatever it is to be able to figure out what I can do to get you a higher compensation. And so either you can believe elsewhere, but if we have a good relationship and there's trust there, I might need to have, let's say I need 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
In a month down the road, Shrey, I didn't forget about you. I'm still working on this. I have a few more executive discussions I need to have. I'm pretty close. Month 2, Shrey, I'm not saying bleed this out for eternity,
Mm-hmm.
but put a specific time frame around when we can make this happen, and show me some checkpoints along the way, just like a project, right? Give me some milestones to show me and prove to me that you're working on this,
It makes
because
a
then
lot
you're
of
held
difference. Yeah.
accountable for it. Anything else, it's like just wishy-washy conversations that don't mean
False promises,
much.
actually.
But if you can Exactly, but if you can hold the manager accountable, and you also have some accountability about doing new things, adding new responsibilities, and showing kind of your loyalty and what you're willing to do, then that conversation is a lot easier to be had than kind of going off the deep end and interviewing and getting job offers and presenting them back to the employer and creating animosity and friction along the way.
Got it. Oh, great! I think we have debunked all of the process that goes on into like this employer-employee setting, and that's a great way of looking at it. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions more. I'll not take much of your time. We are already done 1.5 hours. I think it's going pretty good for me. How about you?
Good. Yeah, no, it's good. I enjoyed
Great.
it.
Okay, so I have another question for you, which is which I want you to describe in steps, and that is, what exactly a fresher can do to get into the Salesforce market, to get their first job, because it's actually very difficult to get an entry into this industry, then to get another job while you're already an experienced professional.
Right. So for the newcomers, I'm a big fan of, again, I'll say this again, showcasing what you're learning, right? And putting it out into the public forum. Because, just getting a certification or a trailhead, unfortunately, that isn't enough anymore. That may have worked, I think, in years in the past. But it's also you being able to build out your own applications and your own solutions to problems. And you got to think of your own problems to put a solution around too. And there's plenty of ideas you can find out there as far as building a new application in Salesforce, building a new CRM based on something that's happening in your personal life. I've seen plenty of people find success by building out their own applications, creating a YouTube video around it, showcasing it out to the public, continue to build upon it and enhance it to basically show the world what you can do, right? Whenever we're talking about trailhead and certifications, that's a very structured and linear way of learning. That doesn't really work in the workforce, right? In the workforce, when you're doing projects, you're getting hit left, right, and everywhere in between to figure out problems and come up with solutions to those problems. So, and that certification and those trailheads are very scripted, right? And so that doesn't really give you the problem-solving skills, in my opinion, that you could have and provide guidance to and value to a potential employer by building out your own, right? And following, here's some requirements I came up with. Here's the solution design. Here's the object model. Here's what I want to do. I want to do a flow. It's going to call it Apex trigger. That's going to do an API call out. All those things that you require as a Salesforce developer, for example, or an admin, you can showcase those skills and be able to provide a real project, life in the real world project by doing so. Otherwise, you're kind of doing what everyone else is doing, and that's just a very linear path, which I don't think will find as much success as if you go off the beaten track some.
Got it. Uh, okay, so yeah, I want to add some more points onto it. So if you're a fresher who just learned Salesforce and is looking to get an opportunity, the thing is, a lot of employers out there want someone who's an experienced professional who can start the job from day one. But instead, what these people I think should do is they should start doing internships for free, or they should start just volunteering their work to the other contractors who are working into this space, who are willing to leverage some tasks to these people. And in like, so what these contractors want, they want to do as much of the jobs as they can do in the same time frame that they've got, and they want to earn as much as they can and keep it to themselves. That's why they've become contractual people, right? So they are actually looking for these people who just want to do a job and do not want to take much of a salary, just a little stipend, or even there are some people out there who are just willing to work for free. So they should start looking out for these contractual people who are working at different projects or in different positions, and they should start working for them for free, and eventually they learn enough of the things to actually get a job into the market. Or if there are some companies where they are working into Salesforce and they are hiring some freshers, they should immediately go and join those companies, because there are very few out there who are doing that, and that will pay them a lot in a longer run. So yeah, these are certain things that I think they can do in order to get into the industry. And after getting into the industry, it becomes very
I
easier.
agree. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I agree with that approach too. The thing you don't want to do is just be taken advantage of either, right? And so don't expect, don't work for free for 6 months. I just think that's kind of overkill. I would say if you can work for, 6 weeks just to get your bearings and to show some examples, and then ask that contractor you're working for if they could, pay you a little something just to make sure, you're getting compensated for it. But, and people have different takes about working for free. Some don't agree with it. Some do agree with it.
Agree.
At the end of the day, it's like you have to do whatever it takes to get your foot in the door. If that means working for free and working 12 hours a day to get started for a few weeks, then do that, right? I'm not saying that's the only way to do it, but I'm saying if that opportunity is presented to you, take advantage of that opportunity versus waiting for your ideal situation that could take you a year down the road. You just got to get your foot in the door doing something versus doing nothing.
If one is really determined for it, I don't think that person should actually think about getting compensated
That's
initially. Right. But what they should think about is getting their skills on track. And once they are confident enough into their skill sets, they'll automatically get compensated for it, I guess. And if they are not getting compensated, then they should ask for getting compensated.
Exactly. And while you're doing that, have a little repository of the work that you're doing, because that's the stuff you want to showcase to a real employer once you get hired. So don't do the stuff that you're doing for free. Don't just think it's free work that you can't hold on to be able to leverage when you're going in front of an employer. And I did this when I was starting out of school. Like I had C++ programs that I had printed out, of all things. This is 22 years ago. Printed out, showed it to an employer during the interview, and talked about a C++ calculator that I had built in C++ code. And I got the job. I mean, I don't know if that was what sealed the deal. It probably wasn't, but
it matters.
It didn't hurt my situation.
It matters.
It matters, exactly. It showed evidence about what my experience really is and the challenges and problems that I've solved.
And it makes a huge difference into the employer's eyes. Because it shows the determination and the dedication that you have to get into the industry, and no one wants to lose that kind of a candidate. Yeah,
exactly.
Because of the motivation and everything that they've got to get into the door or get their foot into the door, actually.
Another thing on motivation is just last week, kind of off the track a little bit. I had someone I was interviewing, doing a pre-screening with for an employer, and got his resume. Submitted it, and the employer said, well, that's great, Chris. This individual already reached out to some of our internal personnel to ask more about the company and the culture and the type of projects we work on before you even submitted this. So that shows intuition, or not, I guess it shows dedication to about the individual, that they're very interested in working for us.
Yes.
I mean, to me, you're putting yourself way above and beyond what the normal person
it makes a lot of difference. It leaves an impact, actually. Yeah,
that's right. And it's not hard,
easy.
Right? It's just kind of getting it out of your comfort zone a little bit, but it's all online through LinkedIn. I mean, it's an email, it's a LinkedIn conversation. It's not like they're going to come to your house and chop away your left arm or anything like that. It's not that serious.
Great. Okay, so this was the question for all of the candidates who are looking to get into the industry. Now I've got questions for the people who are looking for talent, basically the companies. So my question is, what companies can actually do to attract and retain talent?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, attract is you got to stand out, right? You got to figure out how to do that. And I think a lot of times that comes to having your internal employees help you recruit, provide referrals about why and recommendations about why this company is, because word of mouth travels fast, right? And so having your internal employees be satisfied so they do have someone reach out to them, it's a good story to tell, right? And then, understanding what is, what is the company trying to do, right? How are you attracting talent? Why do you stand out? What is your message to the market? Kind of what are you doing differently than most? And if it's the same story, then you're probably going to not really get much traction from a candidate perspective, right? Um, a lot of that times, again, we talked about this equity position. I think that's a different perspective. Unlimited PTO could be a perspective. You can look at it as a benefit, a good 401k match, compensation being above average if you can afford that. There's a bunch of different levers you can pull as an employer to attract talent, but you gotta pull some of them. If you don't pull any of them, then don't blame yourselves or blame yourselves essentially why you're not attracting good talent to come in. And then what was your other question around this, Shrey?
Got it. And what about retaining the talent? What are the things?
Retain the talent. That's right. That's right. That's right. So keeping them active and engaged, and presenting new opportunities to them, paying them a bonus if they want to continue down the certification track. Continue to pay them bonuses for that. Throw them in new projects. Keep them keep them active in their knowledge and in their experience, and in working with different companies or industries or technologies. If the position is going to be dull and it's going to stay dull for a long period of time, people don't want that. They want the opportunity to learn new things. They want to have some autonomy to make their own decisions. They want management that they can turn to and feel like there's a good open door policy to be able to work with and talk about strategies and their career growth and things like that. I think those are the things that employees want and will keep them satisfied, and to hopefully keep them in place for a long period of time. But if you don't do any of those things, then expect the turnover to be above average as well.
Got it. Uh, okay, so I have a last question for you, and that's a question that I'm also curious about. Let me shoot that
Sure.
up. So where do you see the Salesforce ecosystem heading in the next 3 to 5 years? And are you optimistic about it?
I am. So 3 to 5 years, I think it's going to be more of the same. I think additional acquisitions are going to be happening. I think an interesting thing I heard about was that Service Cloud is now exceeding Sales Cloud revenue. So I think there's going to continue to be growth in the Service Cloud sector as well. I think Sales Cloud may be a little bit saturated now. I think Service Cloud, and then with Slack acquisition, I think that's going to continue to elevate the Service Cloud footprint in the ecosystem as well. I think 3 to 5 years we'll continue to see growth. I'm not sure if it's going to be the same level of growth as we're seeing over the last couple of years recently, but I think Salesforce continues to innovate. I would like to see some additional AI capabilities to continue to come into place. I'm a fan of Internet of Things and IoT, and I know Salesforce they started strong in that a few years ago at Dreamforce, and then I haven't seen it lately. Maybe
I
that'll be
built
something
this
they'll
car
pick
on
up on
IoT
again with
actually. I built
IoT.
this
Yeah.
car.
I remember seeing you in India
Yeah.
Dreaming, showing your session on that. Yeah, so I love that idea. I mean, I think IoT is the way in the future, as well as artificial intelligence and machine learning as well. So I'd like to see some additional advancements happening there within Salesforce. It's going to be interesting to see about like we talked about earlier, about the system integrator side of the house. Are they going to continue to build professional services and advisory services? I think the market needs it. I don't know if they need it necessarily from Salesforce doing it, but I know advisory services, a lot of clients don't know enough about the technology and how to get the best ROI out of Salesforce. So I think there's going to continue to be some good some good leeway there and some good runway for companies that want to get into the advisory sector. But yeah, I think as much as ever, if you want to break into a career in Salesforce, you have at least a good 3 to 5 year runway ahead of you based on what they're continuing to do. They're continuing to innovate. They're continuing to acquire. I think they're doing everything that they need to do to be successful in the next few years.
So, okay. I mean, I got your point, and I have something to add on to that as well. From last 5 to 6
Sure.
years, every year I've been thinking about that Salesforce is at its peak, and everything which goes onto a peak, I mean, goes a little bit down with time, right? So this is how it looks like. The graph looks like. But every another year, Salesforce has increased that peak to such a level that I was not able to imagine, or I was not able to think about. Like I could never imagine that Salesforce is going to be this big in terms of everything. Like the partner ecosystem is big, like as big as ever. The positions, the compensation, the like the customers, everything is continuously increasing. And 4 years back when LWC I think Lightning Experience when 4 years back when Lightning Experience came, I thought that it's going to be a little bit changed or something like that. But till then, since then till now, there are like so many things that have come up, and there are still so many things that are coming up, that sometimes I get I mean I get worried about where is it exactly going, or are we actually thinking less of it, or are we actually overvaluing the things that which Salesforce is doing, because it's doing it at a tremendous rate,
Sure.
and at a size which
Right.
no one could ever imagined of, I guess. I mean, do you agree with that?
Right. No, that's a good. I do agree with some of that. I think the acquisitions are playing a big part of this, right? Continue to stand up new clouds, right? So government cloud, health cloud. They're always come up with innovative ways to repackage, retool, innovate new, acquire new, right? And so when you have all these different verticals available, they'll continue to figure out ways to gain additional market share, right? Tableau acquisition was huge, right? Slack acquisition was huge. Those are kind of the big ones recently. The Acumen was kind of showing the public space that they're getting into more advisory and consulting services, right? And so, I think they have a good internal research and development department as far as understanding what customers' needs are and continue to innovate the platform around hearing the voice of the customer. And so, when we talk about artificial intelligence, IoT, I think there's continued to be different paths that they'll continue to explore to figure out how to bring additional market presence in the overall ecosystem. So, they're not a stagnant company, and they continue to make big strides in innovation and acquisitions, which I think will continue to be part of their increased trajectory of growth over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's it that I wanted to ask and I wanted to discuss with you, and I was really excited for it, and I really enjoyed the conversation that I had with you after such a long break, and it was really amazing to get
So,
insights onto all of these things that I've been looking for from so long. It was really nice talking to you, Chris.